What's up, everyone? Welcome back to BROJO Online. Thank you so much for following and viewing all our bullshit. Please subscribe and hit the notifications button to keep up to date with what we're doing. So, today we're going to address the issue of people not being honest with you, not connecting with you, not getting deep and meaningful with you. So, this is about you personally. What is it that you do that might put people off from being honest with you? Now, I've got to point out, sometimes people will be dishonest with you because they're dishonest with people in general. It's not really about you. This video is when it's about you. So quickly off the top of my head, I made a big list of all the various reasons why people hold back and why people don't feel safe to be honest. So this isn't going to cover every possible eventuality, every reason why it doesn't happen, but it should cover some of the main ones. And these aren't in any particular order of importance either. It depends on the person as to how significant each of these are. One of the first ones, one of my pet peeves, is people who try to fix you. So this is people pleasers. Whenever you share something that isn't necessarily positive, they take it as a cry for help and they respond with solutions and advice, all unwarranted and all unsolicited. It's very hard to share with you if somebody knows that you're going to dive on it like a problem that needs to be solved. Because it's judgmental and it's annoying. So generally, people will not share with you if you're a fixer. And you can think about it from their perspective, and you probably feel the same way yourself. If you're just trying to share something, and they go, well, you should do this, and you should do that, and you should have done this, it's irritating, if nothing else, but it's also quite suffocating. Like, dude, I'm just trying to talk. I don't need your help. It makes you feel like a child, like you're being patronized. And so it's unlikely that someone's going to want to open up to you if you dive on their throat with solutions every time. Another key reason, you don't listen carefully. You're someone who generally misunderstands. You might interrupt people halfway through what they're saying, or you jump on like examples rather than hearing the underlying point, especially if they're talking about something between you. Like, let's say they're trying to confront you and they use an example, and you're like, but that example's wrong because of this little minor detail, and you're not hearing the underlying thing that they're saying, which is, I'm upset with you. So most people are terrible at listening. There's that old saying about how most people listen to just talk. You know, they're just waiting to have their turn, and they're only listening for keywords that they can use to talk about themselves, rather than actually going, what is this person trying to convey to me? What are they trying to say? What's underneath the words? What's the true meaning of what they're saying? When you come at someone with that intention, it really opens them up, where they feel like, man, I've got the time and space to really take myself out on the road and open myself up. If they feel like, fuck, if I don't get the words perfect, this person's going to misunderstand me and go off on a tangent and judge me and so on, they're not going to want to share with you. And a lot of people have a great fear of being misunderstood, and they get very aggravated by being misunderstood, and that's their problem, that's their insecurity. But it doesn't help if you're interrupting them, go, yeah, I know where you're going with this, you should do this, this, and this. Another one that's probably quite fucking obvious, you've betrayed secrets in the past. That one's so obvious I don't even need to go into it. Of course, someone's not going to want to open up to you if you can't keep a fucking secret. What you might not think of as a more nuanced point here is that you may have betrayed secrets about other people to them. So let's say I'm the person who wants to tell you a secret, and in the past you've gossiped about other people's secrets to me. Well, I've been able to pick up from that you can't be trusted. It doesn't matter if we have a special relationship, like you're sharing the secrets of lesser friends and I'm your best friend. I'm still getting the message, hey, this person can't keep their fucking mouth shut. So you might be a gossipy, talk about other people kind of a person and not realize that that undermines people's trust in you. Even if you've never betrayed them personally, what you're basically saying is, I can't be trusted in general. They might not even really realize that they know that. It'll just make them feel like they can't tell you stuff. Another classic one, you're judgmental and critical. There's some people, I call them contrarians, where no matter what you say, their first reaction is to disagree with it. Before they've even thought it through, they take everything someone says as a challenge. Others, and especially you get this in families and certain cultures that are more traditional or conservative, everything you say is something that must be judged and criticized. Everything you do is wrong. Everything could be done better. Everything you say is basically you asking for critical feedback. If you're the kind of person who shits on someone every time they try to share something, no, they're not going to want to tell you more. That should be obvious. And you might not really realize you're doing it. You might just say, hey, I'm just being honest and I'm shooting from the hip. No, you're not listening and you're being judgmental. That's not the same as being honest at all. Another one is you have a history of using information against people. And again, this could be vicarious. They might have seen you do this with other people and worried that you'll turn it on them. But there's nothing worse, and it's that old classic stereotype in a relationship where you have an argument and something you did wrong 3 months ago or 3 years ago gets brought up and used against you. Or you reveal something vulnerable to a friend in a moment of intimacy, and then later on they embarrass you at the party with this revelation. When you're somebody who holds on to information and then uses it like a strategic tactic, bringing it out like blackmail almost, it's very hard to trust you. It's very hard to know, like, when is this going to be used against me? If you've done that even once to somebody, they're going to find it very hard to open up to you. A classic one that often stems back to a person's childhood is you not being able to control your emotions, you having emotional reactions that are very uncomfortable for the person trying to be honest with you. If you can't take criticism and feedback yourself, for example, you get really defensive and reactive to confrontations, or you just lose your shit anytime somebody brings up something emotional. You get really offended really easily. A lot of people go and hark back to their childhood when they had to manage an unstable parent and they had to tiptoe and people please around this parent because they were so emotionally chaotic. If you can't be trusted to manage your shit, then people are going to worry that you're like a box of fireworks and they don't know what's going to set you off. So they choose to withhold as much information as possible, especially when you're really unpredictable about this. I remember seeing a guy once punch his best friend in the face out of nowhere for a seemingly innocuous statement. And I just remember thinking, man, it'd be impossible to tell this guy anything because you have no idea what he's going to fly into a rage about. Or maybe you're somebody who just gets really emotional about stuff and you don't know how to manage it. There's nothing wrong with being emotional. It's about how it's presented and how it's expressed to people. If that's very chaotic and unpredictable and scary and a hassle to deal with, people are just going to start withholding information and keeping things bland and vanilla to keep you under control. Carrying on from that last point would be the more specific one about you being unpredictable. Safety and trust comes from predictability. If I know that when I tell you something, you're probably going to act like this, it makes it easier for me to assess whether or not to tell you. But if you're a wild, ranging, sort of joker card where I don't know how you're going to react to things, if you're surprising in your behavior quite often or surprising in your emotions, if you go hot and cold, if there's no pattern to you, if there's no kind of stability of prediction to you, then it becomes a lot harder to be honest with you because I simply don't know what you're going to do in response to it. Maybe sometimes you're trustworthy and sometimes you're not. Maybe sometimes you're really warm and sometimes you're really critical. And maybe there's no pattern to this. Patterns can be trusted. Like, I can even be honest with someone who has a pattern of behaving badly if I know what the pattern is. I know at least the range of honesty I've got with that person. But if there's no pattern and no predictability, then I can't be honest at all because there's just too much risk. Again, continuing on from that sort of theme, you have unknown or moving boundaries. So the rules keep changing with you. This happens a lot in relationships and in the family dynamic, where something that was okay yesterday is suddenly a problem today, or something that's a problem today is fine tomorrow as long as somebody else does it, or it depends on what mood you're in. And what you think of as right and wrong isn't consistent, and it isn't expressed directly. One of the things I went through when I was younger, especially, is that I'd get in trouble before the rule was told. So I'd break the rule without even knowing the rule existed and get punished for it. It's like getting sent to jail and you didn't even know you broke the law. It gets to the point where you don't want to be seen doing anything because you don't know what the laws are. Well, quite often you get this, especially in romantic relationships. The person doesn't know what the rules are until they break them. And if that is combined with not even knowing if the rules are going to stay the same, not knowing what the rules are today, then it's very hard for someone to open up to you. They're going to start what we call walking on eggshells, which is withholding as much information from you as possible to reduce the likelihood of breaking the rules. Another classic one, you take things personally. There's really nothing harder than trying to share with someone who makes it all about them in a negative way. If somebody's just trying to tell you how they feel about something and you think that this is somehow a criticism of you that you need to defend yourself against, you try to prevent conversations from happening in case they're about you. That makes it very hard to be honest with you because people are going to feel like they have to manage your emotions for you because you can't handle shit yourself. So really, one of the biggest things that will stop you having good friendships and good relationships in general is being highly sensitive to taking things personally. I can't imagine anything more important to work on if that's your problem. Like, if you've got that, you're not going to have healthy relationships, and that shit needs to be squashed first and foremost. Another one, which is more of a hassle, is you turn everything into a big deal in a big conversation. Let's say somebody just wants to set a little boundary with you, and you make that a big 3 hour sit down where you dredge up the past and use thousands of examples and you dig through all the psychology of it. And it's just a hassle to talk about anything with you because you make too big a deal out of it. You can't just listen and go, okay, I heard you, fair enough. You have to have a big conversation about it. Now, some things are required. Some big conversations are necessary, but a lot of the time the person just has to say something, get it off their chest, and you don't even really need to respond at all. So if you're turning everything into a big deal, it just becomes tiring to open up to you. It's like, I don't have the time to tell this person. I've worked with a few clients who are couples, and they might be like just about to go to bed, and one of them has a beef, and they're like, I can't bring it up because we're not going to get to sleep for 4 hours, right? That kind of thing. Another one is you don't share equally. You're an undersharer. So you're someone who asks a lot of questions and absorbs a lot of information but doesn't give anything back in return. It can create a kind of codependent therapeutic relationship. And I don't mean therapeutic in a good way, I mean it more in a sort of sick way, where you become someone's therapist, they dump all their shit on you, and you don't give anything back in return. Now, this doesn't actually necessarily stop people from being honest with you in general, it just stops confident people from being honest with you. Confident people don't like one-sided relationships, and they generally tend to back off them. If you're one-sided, if you take in the information without giving back and being vulnerable or transparent yourself, you're just going to end up with really kind of sick people who just need to offload, people who need a fucking therapist, people who don't have self-respect to demand that you balance and reciprocate the relationship. So you're not going to have very healthy connections in your life. You're a story beater. This is one of my personal pet peeves, where somebody's trying to share something and you always have to beat it, whether it's positive or negative. So that if they're sharing an achievement or a success, you show them of the even bigger success that you had. But more often, oddly enough, this happens with negative events, where somebody's sharing something painful and you top it by something even more painful that happened to you, and you kind of prove that you're suffering worse than they are. I see this a lot, and it's just irritating. It really is. It's so grandiose and self-centered and often full of shit. And it just undermines the person's trying to say, like, I'm in pain, and you're saying, you don't know pain, son. This is pain. It just makes people not want to talk to you. It certainly makes me not want to talk to you. And the last one I've got on my list, kind of a general one really, is that you're dismissive or judgmental about any emotion. It might not be all emotions. Maybe you allow some people to feel some things, but you'll treat other emotions as a problem that needs to be solved or as a failure on the part of the person having it. So, from something like, real men don't cry, or that kind of more classic stuff, to the more subtle things like, oh, you shouldn't be nervous, it's fine, or, why are you getting angry about that? It's not even a big deal. When you dismiss someone's emotions, you're dismissing them as a person, because we are emotional mammals, okay? And if somebody feels that being emotional around you is unsafe because it's going to be judged and criticized, then they can't be themselves around you, in which case, of course, they're going to start shutting down, and they're going to either only show you what you approve of, or they're just going to stop showing you anything at all and move away from you. If you're not cool with emotions, that's your problem. Okay, you're the insecure little bitch in that case. And I say that with love because, I've been there. If somebody else's feelings make you uncomfortable, that's not their fault. You're the one with the problem there. You can't lay that on them. They're not doing anything to you. Let people be angry. Let them be sad. Let them be anxious. Let them be whatever the fuck they are. You don't have to fix it. It's not a problem. It's just a feeling. It will go. It's got nothing to do with you. So generally, all of these things, and there's many, many more, but all of these things have something in common, which is it's not safe to be honest with you. There are risks involved. There is harm that's likely to occur, either emotional or something actually measurable in the outside world. If it's not safe to be honest with you, people won't be honest with you. It's really quite simple, though it's hard to see when you're in it. So you work backwards. If people aren't being honest with you, assume it's not safe to be honest with you. There's also the likelihood that you're hanging out with people who struggle with honesty in general. That tends to go hand in hand. But if you're someone it's safe to be honest with, you will have people open up to you. It's one of the strengths that I've had most of my life is that it's safe to be honest with me. Despite all my many weaknesses and flaws, that one never seemed to be a problem. I had strangers like sharing their life stories with me and their deepest, darkest traumas within 3 minutes of meeting me. Why? Simply because it was safe to be honest with me. So if that's not happening to you on a semi-regular basis, if people don't open up to you, you have to assume there's something about you that makes them feel unsafe. What can you do instead? I'll give you some simple things that you can look into and build on. Try listening without commenting. In fact, if you say anything, it's just a reflection. It's just an acknowledgement of what they've said, giving it back to them to confirm that you've understood it or heard it correctly, with no commentary, no feedback, no solutions, just listening. So someone says to you like, oh, my boss is such a dick and he's bullying me. You don't say, well, you should stand up to him and you should do this, blah, 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 and this, blah. You just say, oh, man, it sounds like that's really hard at your workplace at the moment. And that's it. You just acknowledge what they're telling you and do nothing else. In fact, that's about the only point you need to hear. Yeah, I've got some others, but if you do that, people will open up to you. Share equally. Generally, if you want someone to open up to you, you've got to go first. You've got to make it safe. If you want, say, somebody to be open about their sexuality, first tell them something intimate and vulnerable about your sexuality. Because then you're saying, hey, this is safe to be talked about. I'm clearly not judgmental about it. Basically, anything you want someone to open up about, you do it first and kind of lead the way by modeling. It won't work every time, so to speak, but it gives you the best possible chance of someone feeling safe with you around that particular topic. And if you do it around enough topics, you get this general sense of like everything's open to discussion. You don't have to hide anything from me because I don't give a fuck. We can talk about anything and I won't judge you because I don't even judge myself about it. This is actually a piece of therapeutic work for yourself. If you start sharing first and leading and being vulnerable and shameless, you're going to remove a lot of that judgment and shame you have around emotions and events and so on. And then you're going to be building your confidence as you help others build theirs. This one's a tricky one, but try treating all information equally. There's actually a downside to celebrating information. So if you give someone like, wow, that's good news, or you did so well, or, compliment them on what they're telling you, it kind of has the dark side of the coin. It's like, I'm also going to criticize you and be negative about the bad stuff. People generally feel that way. Like, this is why a lot of people don't trust compliments, because it feels like a setup for criticism later on. So what I try to do my best is treat all information neutrally. Like, if someone did really well, that's just by their subjective standards. That's got nothing to do with me. I can reflect and say, oh, you're clearly quite happy about that. But I don't need to validate them and say, and I believe you're a good person too. That's not my call. That's not for me to judge. It's all about them. So neither do I criticize nor reward. I try to do this most of the time. If someone does a good job, I'm like, well, I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it. And if somebody's suffering, I was like, I feel bad for you. But I don't say that's good and that's bad. I don't say this is positive, I want more of this, and this negative, I want less of this. Right? Because that's going to skew the information. People are going to start seeking my approval instead of just being open and honest with me. So treat everything as neutral information. It's neither good nor bad, it's just information. Another point, give people the benefit of the doubt. Assume they can handle their own lives, even if it looks like they can't. Okay, they've obviously lived this long without your love and support, perhaps. So maybe they don't actually need you to fix anything. Maybe they don't need you to manage their lives for them. Maybe they don't need you to control their emotions for them, right? You probably wouldn't want someone doing that to you unless you're very needy and fucked up. So don't do it to them. So if in doubt, don't fix. At the very least, wait for them to ask for help and advice. And if they don't ask, don't offer. Just reflect. Someone's like, my boss is being such a bitch, I don't even know what to do. Be like, yeah, it sounds confusing. That's it. You're done. You don't have to be like, well, this is what you should do, because they didn't ask. Maybe they can figure it out on their own, or maybe they need to suffer enough to build up the courage through frustration to finally make a move. But if you try to help them, usually all you're doing is disempowering them and enabling bad behavior while sort of validating yourself and your ego. Nobody wins there. This one should be obvious. Keep fucking secrets. Don't have exceptional people be like, I won't tell anyone except John. Because now you're trusting their secret to John. You might trust John, but they don't. How do they know if John's going to keep it a secret? And John isn't beholden to them. John doesn't have as much motivation to keep the secret as maybe you should have. So don't tell fucking anyone when something is given to you in privacy. Not your own partner, not your best friend, nothing. Okay? Make a secret a secret. Learn how to take things to the grave with you. This is the one kind of exception I have to total transparency, is while I'm totally honest about myself, I don't reveal shit about other people unless I have their permission to do so. It's very, very, especially in my line of work, people are telling me very deep and intimate things. It would destroy my job if I revealed those things to people. So treat it like you're a spy who's been given vital information for the security of the country, and it can't even be tortured out of you. Do this with even the slightest little things, and people will start to notice over time. Sometimes people are testing you with information. They give you stuff to see if you'll tell anyone. When they find out you didn't even tell that one person they thought you'd tell, they'll start to trust you more. Big one, learn to manage your emotions. Somebody else telling you something is not their problem in terms of how you react. If you find that somebody telling truths to you gets you really offended or really angry or really sad, that's okay as long as you don't take it out on them. Learn to just say, like, well, I'm having a pretty big reaction to that. Let's just slow down for a minute. Rather than going, well, fuck you then, right? Make it so that no matter what emotion you have, they never need to worry about what's going to happen to them. Okay, there's never going to be consequences for them. If you haven't got that shit sorted, get yourself a therapist or a coach, because I can't imagine more important work to do in your life than to manage your own emotions in a healthy way. I mean, your emotions are your life. If you don't manage that, you're not managing anything. One more, I guess. Stop making anything about you. Even if someone's giving you feedback about you, it's still not about you. Nothing is really personal to you. Why? Because it's coming from someone else, their own subjective experience. They have their own reality, their own universe that they live in that's really got nothing to do with you. Now, sometimes feedback can be helpful and accurate, but most of the time it's just somebody saying, in my skewed perspective of the universe, this is how I see you. There's actually very little value in that information, unless you've got a blind spot that they're really helpful with. But if that's the case, you're probably asking for the feedback and they're probably a professional. But in any case, if somebody says something and you feel that it's about you, assume that it's not, even if they say it's about you. Assume this is not about me and respond accordingly. Right? You taking things personally is egotistic and inaccurate. It's got nothing to do with you. It's only your own ego that wants that to be true. It wants you to be the special center of the universe. Well, the only universe that you're the center of is your own. To everybody else, you're just a peripheral character. Last and not least, if you really want to have good connections and deep relationships with people, get some fucking coaching. Okay, if you struggle with this stuff, get some help. We're not born knowing this stuff, and most of us are raised in a way that takes us in the opposite direction of a good connection. Most of us are raised with bad attachment styles, and a lot of the things we've talked about today have happened to you, and that's why you find it hard to connect with people. So you need some help, probably. Get in touch, dan@brojo.org, and I'll help you correct this stuff so that you've got the best possible chance for some genuine connections. Thank you for listening, watching, whatever the fuck. I'll see you next time.